Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. This is your 30-minute daily fix of business news from across the African continent. I'm Ramanyang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, where it's 9 p.m. Here's what's coming up in the next half hour. A $28 million shortfall in South Africa's economy as metalworkers' strike enters its second day. Rwanda and Uganda take up positions to reap revenues from growing tourist traffic. And a Kenyan entrepreneur who's serving five-star cuisine at relatively low prices. And no, that's not an oxymoron. We'll have the details shortly. Now, we start tonight pretty much like we did on Tuesday in South Africa, where members of the National Union of Metalworkers are still on strike in a bitter row over higher wages after talks between the union and their employers, all 10,000 plus of them, collapsed. The union is demanding a 15% hike in wages. Employers have offered hikes of between 7% and 8.5%. And the strike is now affecting operations of companies in the construction and engineering sectors. Companies like Murray & Roberts and Aveng, both of which are involved in building the absolutely crucial power plants of Medupe and Kusile for the state-owned power utility Eskom. The strike is estimated to cost the economy over $28 million a day.
However, our members don't have the patience to wait for the court interdict. Court interdict is not going as Eskom. Workers are having serious problems as we speak now. Things are going up. They are not waiting for court interdict. As yesterday it was petrol price increase, there was electricity increase, there's train increase, there's all increases. There's no court interdict in those increases. Workers have to pay for those things. So we cannot wait for court interdict.
Over in Nigeria, Boko Haram's insurgency is expected to slow down that country's economy yet again, knocking about half a percentage point or so off growth, much like it did last year. Nigeria's Finance Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, however, says that while the violence in the northeast may put off some potential foreign investors, those who are in Nigeria for the long term and portfolio investors in Nigerian government debt are not shaken. Africa's biggest economy is projected to grow by about 6.75% in 2014. It overtook South Africa to vault into the top spot this year following a long overdue rebasing exercise that almost doubled its entire GDP. The Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has approved a new law that brings into effect 10% capital gains tax, and that will apply on trading at the stock market. Egypt, of course, as you might be aware, is in a fairly critical economic situation. It's trying to recover from 3 years of political and economic turmoil. The government recently submitted its annual budget for the 2014-2015 fiscal year, and in that time frame, it hopes to narrow the budget deficit to about 10% of GDP. Right now, it's over $30 billion, roughly 12.5% of entire economic output. Now, the government plans to cut public spending, reduce subsidies on energy, and at the same time raise tax revenue through a raft of new taxes. Let's get some more details now on this particular live. CCTV's Yasser Kim joins us from Cairo. Yasser, when exactly does this new law come into force?
This week, once the president signs the law, which is already done, it's then put into the papers in a day or two, and the next day it's put into effect. And what we're told that this could be tomorrow, Thursday, or maximum by the new week starting in Egypt, it starts on Sunday. So it's that soon to start establishing this law.
Indeed. So the countdown effectively is fairly close by. But this isn't the first time we've talked about this law, Yasser. It's been amended since it was first introduced around late May, early June. Walk us through the main changes that have happened between then and now.
Now, the capital gains tax, you all know, it's just a tax on the profits, only the profits for each for the total annual sales or total annual sales at the stock market. So it's not transaction by transaction. And that's where the change is, because before it was on every transaction, and that was called stamp tax. And in this tax, everyone would pay, whether he loses or he wins or he profits, he would pay on every transaction 0.01%. And now it's only on his profit in the whole year. At the very end of the year, they take his profit and they take 10% out of the profit after deducting the commissions and everything and the losses. Also, there will be an exemption for anyone who's less than $5,000, and also concerning the cash dividends will be also exempted until 25% of ownership.
Indeed. Finally, Yasser, when this law was first proposed, the EGX ended up posting its biggest one-day decline. Today, however, the EGX 30 ended the day about 24 basis points lower. Would it be fair to say that the amendments have settled most, if not all, of the investor concerns that were essentially indicated in early June?
Exactly. Not all, but some of them feel that maybe this would be on the long run not so effective. Others are saying it will, at a time when Egypt should be encouraging investments, foreign investments into the country, a tax like this one will deter people from going in, especially that what the government will take will not exceed $1 billion per year at the best level, will never exceed $1 billion. So in return, there should be encouragement of foreign investments rather than put a tax that will keep investors going to other markets more attractive, like Dubai and other regions close by.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for that. That's CCTV's Yasser Kim there live in Cairo. He'll certainly keep tabs on the developments happening in the North African markets. And speaking of the markets, let's make a quick run through the equities here for you. Right now, the all-share index relatively flat on the day. The JSE all-share index essentially hitting intraday highs, record highs at that in Tuesday trading, and it's still continuing pretty much on the same path today. 51,883.71 is a relevant number. When we come back, we'll be looking at the shipping fraternity in East Africa. It's acting to speed up trade in the region. And Rwanda and Uganda taking up positions to reap some dividends from growing tourist numbers in East Africa. Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies.
From small businesses to large-scale enterprises, hear directly from entrepreneurs behind the story. It's about putting you in the picture so you know where Africa fits in the global context.
Global Business, weekdays at this time on CCTV Africa.
Zambia is a hidden gem, soon to make its shining debut on the global tourist circuit. It successfully hosted the UN World Tourism General Assembly in 2013 and is expecting the exposure to shoot their previously slow-growing tourist earning numbers far beyond the 2010 mark of $148 million.
We're about 10 minutes into your 30-minute fix of business news from across Africa. Welcome back to the program. Now, the cost of doing business in Kenya and in East Africa is expected to drop significantly, going by the pledges, at least, that have been made at the Kenyan port of Mombasa on Monday this week. The port is now a signatory of a community charter and a performance dashboard that commits it to boosting its infrastructural development and the efficiency in which cargo is cleared. As a result, transportation of goods along the northern corridor, that's it from the port of Mombasa all the way to Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi and South Sudan, ought to drop significantly, and that should ultimately benefit you, the suppliers and consumers of goods.
Well, the port charter represents the bigger picture, where key players in the port community have now their respective commitments towards improved efficiency and competitiveness of the corridor. The Kenya Ports Authority, and I'm very grateful to the remarks by the chairman, their strategic plan supports these efforts by setting out a roadmap that focuses on achieving service excellency, customer satisfaction, business growth, and good corporate governance.
That's Kenya's Transport Secretary there with the government perspective. But how about we look at this from the perspective of the private sector? Chris Kiptor is the Kenya Country Director at Trademark East Africa, is live in studio with me right now. Thank you for your time this evening. With respect to the question of rail, less than 10% of the goods that come out of Mombasa's port are moved by rail. But that charter aims to increase that proportion to 35% in another 4 years, give or take. Why are companies so averse to rail transport?
Thank you, Kantai. The charter aims to offload at least a significant amount of cargo from rail to road. Actually, the target in the port community charter is to move it to 30% from the current level of 5%.
Yeah.
The reason is because if you look at currently, the cost of operating the rail is much higher. Transport by rail ought to be the second best mode of transport. But for a while, the railway system in Kenya has been neglected.
Yeah.
And even with the concession of the railway, when RVR was given, it really didn't bring in that reliability which cargo owners require.
So from the perspective of the private sector, they would look at the concession and say, well, this whole thing has essentially not worked. It's failed.
It didn't work because it doesn't provide for that reliability that is required.
So that's the reason why road transport in this country is still competitive on a cost basis.
Yes, on a cost basis. Yet rail ought to be actually the most competitive. But with the coming into being of standard gauge rail, which is expected to be completed by 2018, this is significantly going to change. And we expect a number of private cargo owners to be able to transport their cargo through rail. And this is the commitment they have made through the charter, because this charter is been created through collaboration of both private and public sector.
Let's talk about this charter in a little more detail, because it's a fairly wide document, 13 different agencies having signed this entire thing. But one particular lead agency is KRA, which you guys have to deal with every single time you have to clear goods from the port. What exactly is it supposed to do under this charter?
Let me correct you before I answer your question. The number of agencies that signed the charter are 25. There are 13 public entities. 9 private sector entities and 3 special interest groups. So Kenya Revenue Authority is one of those public sector agencies. And the commitments of KRA in this charter are about 3. First is to deal with bond management. One of them is to make sure that the bond management is computerized, so that when cargo reaches at the border, it's automatically cancelled. That bond is cancelled. The second one is...
What happens right now?
Right now, it takes a while when you reach through the border. It's still a manual process. Someone has to send papers to headquarters, and that takes a lot of time. And it ties capital, because holding a bond is money.
It's tying up your working capital for clients across East Africa.
Yes, it ties a lot of working capital for clients. So this is supposed to automatically cancel once the cargo reaches the border. But one of the big commitments of Kenya Revenue Authority is the pre-clearance. KRA has indicated that 48 hours before a cargo arrives at the port, it will have been pre-cleared. And this goes with the commitment of the private sector in the same charter that 70% of their cargo will have to be going through the green channel, which means that KRA and other public entities have to work on the authorized economic operators, which would then facilitate the green channel to work. Green channel means you have nothing to declare. There will be no physical verification on your cargo. And this is a commitment that Kenya Revenue Authority has given, that is going to emphasize more on pre-clearance. At the moment, that is not the case, and it tends to, a lot of delays are caused by delays in clearance by Kenya Revenue Authority.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Mr. Kiptor. Fascinating discussion. Certainly need to make time for it a little later on. Now then, let's take you to Rwanda, specifically to meet our genetic cousins. Around 85% of Rwanda's tourism income is derived from individuals like you, perhaps, who are eager to spend time around gorillas. Now, the highlight of the gorilla tourism calendar is the annual gorilla infant naming ceremony. As CCTV's Peter Okabe reports tonight on What's Hot, this year's ceremony brought visitors from all over the world. And it offered a platform to East African countries to market their unified tourism offering.
The Kwitizina or gorilla naming ceremony is an annual event that sees newborn infant gorillas given names by distinguished guests in the local community. This year there are 18 new infants and a variety of guests from right across the world to give them names.
So I wish to name one of the gorillas or baby gorillas, a Chinese name but literally equivalent to what's proposed name as Ubukwai, because mountain gorillas are the wealth of the country through tourism. I have a nickname for it, like for all our pandas, we call it Wang Wang.
And I've chosen to name her Umataka. This word can be translated as umbrella.
The ceremony, which sees the local community interact with foreigners and thus build a sense of ownership of the tourist product, also enables tourists and operators from various countries sample the Rwandan tourist offering.
Rwanda gave me and my fellow tour operators and media from China really unforgettable impression and experience. We are more than pleasantly surprised.
Gorilla tourism has given Rwanda the platform to engage with the rest of East Africa in developing a harmonized tourist product and even develop the single tourist visa.
Rwanda, Kenya and Uganda have put in place a single tourist visa to facilitate free movement of tourists and visitors in the three countries. In addition, Rwanda has opened its borders to all citizens of African countries, allowing them to come to Rwanda without a prior visa and acquire it at the first port of entry.
It is a development that has been hailed by the business community across the whole of East Africa, and one that has gone a long way to improve the tourism experience and income from the sector.
It would be like a Schengen visa. So it means that it encourages people, because they don't have to go through a whole long process each time trying to get into different countries. We're recognizing that we're one area. So once you get your visa to Kenya, you're able to just travel around the region. We're able to market ourselves together. And obviously doing things together gives you more power and more marketability than trying to do things individually.
East African countries are also trying to develop diversified and complementary products that can be marketed alongside each other and also by a coordinated system of tour agents. The Kwitizina or the gorilla naming ceremony is the cornerstone of tourism in Rwanda, the highlight of a visit as a tourist to this country. This is just one of the events and destinations that are being marketed by Rwanda and the whole of East Africa as a common tourist destination. Peter Okabe, CCTV in Musanze in northern Rwanda.
Aren't those gorillas just the cutest things you've ever seen? Quick run through the commodities now for you. Let's see exactly what's going on the prices. The one thing to keep in mind with these numbers, however, isn't what you're seeing on your screen now. It's a story out of South Sudan. The government there apparently intends to borrow roughly $1 billion from oil firms to fund its budget for the 2014-2015 fiscal year. Fascinating story that. The details on Reuters. We'll cover that a little more later on tomorrow. When we come back, we'll introduce you to a Kenyan entrepreneur. He's serving five-star cuisine at remarkably low prices. The details of how he's doing that, and no, it's not an oxymoron, they're coming up next. welcome back to Global Business Africa. We're still continuing our journey into the business world on this day, right here on CCTV. Let's continue with a quick run through news making headlines in various media across Africa and outside it, starting with the Vanguard in Nigeria. It's reporting that the Nigerian British Chamber of Commerce is saying that the telecommunications sector's improvements were not properly included in the rebasing of the country's GDP in the first quarter of the year. It argues that the sector has grown exponentially in the last decade and it's one of the fastest growing in the world. Over in Southern Africa, the Herald in Zimbabwe reporting that tobacco growers this year raked in about $650 million from the sale of about 200 million kilos of tobacco. And like in the past, when much of the crop was produced by a handful of white commercial farmers, this year's output came from about 106,000 different growers, all of whom were registered by the Tobacco Industry and Marketing Board. And finally, The Guardian in the UK reporting that the former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair has agreed to advise the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. This has kicked up quite a storm online. It's part of a program funded by the United Arab Emirates and it has promised to deliver huge business opportunities to all those involved. The former Prime Minister and Middle East Peace Envoy apparently will be giving the President advice on economic reform in collaboration with the UAE Finance Task Force based in Cairo. Should be fairly interesting to see how that particular thing turns out. Let's move on to a different segment now. Restaurants, they're popping up pretty much every single month in Kenya. Food is really big business in the East African nation, and young entrepreneurs are finding a way of offering exclusivity to their clients. Tonight on Grassroots, CCTV's Carol Oyola speaks to Paul Kihiko. He runs a food business that offers sophisticated cuisine at pocket-friendly prices.
A normal morning routine at the Gourmet Nomad's office, taking food orders, lining them up for delivery later on. Gourmet Nomads is a brainchild of 26-year-old Paul Kihiko, a hospitality management graduate who started his own business following numerous attempts to get the perfect job.
We started the business about 6 months ago and we chose the name the Gourmet Nomads because we're delivering good food all around Nairobi. So we consider ourselves nomads in this industry. And the nomad part of it also comes in terms of the type of meals we produce. We jump from different countries sometimes. We do Asian cuisine, we do Chinese cuisine sometimes. So that's why we consider ourselves nomads.
The food quality is similar to that served at a 5-star restaurant, but much cheaper than the average meal at a local restaurant, a plate at only $3 US. This, he says, is a way of giving Kenyans their money's worth.
I would say what sets us apart is our price point, which is very affordable to the common mwananchi in Kenya, the quality, and we also provide free delivery within Nairobi, straight to your doorstep or your office. And we also provide free dessert in terms of a yogurt or a fruit of the season.
But it hasn't been all smooth sailing. Kihiko initially started the business with food trucks, mobile kitchens that he placed at strategic points in Nairobi. But this did not turn out to be profitable.
Initially, we wanted to open a food truck business, but then again we came across so much red tape in terms of the city council don't give permits. So we had to switch our business model just a little bit, just to tweak it.
With 13 employees, they get about 100 orders a day. No marketing has been done. Word of mouth has put them here.
It's easier to bring out ideas, new ideas, you know. And we have different recipes, like every week we come up with different recipes. And that's a good thing about gourmet, because it's not a fixed kind of menu.
Our main goal, our main target, for the next 3 or 4 months, we'll be serving 1,000 lunches a day.
Gourmet Nomads is not just about good food, but also how they package it as well. They deliver their food in brown bags, showing that they are environmentally conscious, a key issue that is being raised in African startup businesses.
Main goal, which is in line with our investors, because we do have 2 investors, is to enter the airline industry. That's what we want to do, providing meals for the airlines, which are very affordable and high quality as well.
At the face of growing competition from other catering businesses in Kenya, Gourmet Nomad seeks to stand out of the crowd and become a household name. Carol Oyola, CCTV, Nairobi, Kenya.
Quick run through the currencies here for you. Some interesting stories reflected in these numbers. The Kenyan shilling is relatively firm, fairly thin volume in the markets today as far as trading is concerned. The South African rand, however, at a 2-week low. Will that position deteriorate as NUMSA strike rolls on? We'll have to wait and see. Now, just before we go, here's a quick run through what we're working on for tomorrow's show. NUMSA strike continues in South Africa, as we mentioned. The economy is losing roughly $28 million a day. That number, of course, will be firmed up as the strike rolls on. We'll be looking at the effects in the manufacturing sector, the country's third largest employer. And at the same time, we'll be exploring how American financial regulations are threatening the lifeline of millions of Somalis who live in Africa after they outlawed hawalas. It's a fairly popular money transfer service, and this will be a controversial and interesting story affecting millions. Certainly looking forward to your thoughts on that subject and plenty more. That's it for this show, particularly today. We do look forward to your content and your feedback. Send it to us on globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com, or you can get in touch with us on Twitter and on Facebook. We'll see you over there where the news continues 24/7.